and we're live.
Probably.
Well, most definitely.
we haven't timed the delay from when it tells us to when we actually go on or go off.
Yeah.
And maybe I should do that at some point, since we don't have
Well,
fancy music.
We'll figure this out. Well, look, greetings, hello, welcome to iWords and Upwards. Yeah, sorry, we're a little bit late. A slight technical difficulties, but yeah, we figured it out. How is everything with you, Jesse? It's been a while.
Oh, not too bad. I mean, certainly poorer today than I was 2 days ago. And by that, I don't mean like just, not well. I mean, the US dollar is worth less today than it was 2 days ago. So, yeah, I'm not a billionaire stock market person, and that's the case of lots of Americans. But yes, it has been a minute. I don't think I've seen you since your episode with Louis, which I really enjoyed.
Look, I'm happy you did enjoy it. We will invite him again, and maybe all three of us can sit down and have a good chat. Yeah, he's a good guy. Very, very knowledgeable too.
Certainly seems like it. Very laid back with an inside perspective, like you have, but obviously it's a different experience. But again, that knowledge from the system and the culture, being able to speak about what he observes as, I think you called him pretty close to a neutral party, as he's not, an avid Wrexham fan all his life, or even necessarily a newcomer. So I thought it was really interesting to hear you two talk about that.
Objective point of view always helps. He's very mature. He understands football from many different vantage points. I think that kind of a person, like a real football person, not somebody who is just enjoying the sport because that's his hobby, or he thinks that, or they think that they understand the game. Louis is somebody who actually knows what he's talking about, and I find that when you have a person like that who is at the same time neutral, like, you actually have as close of an objective picture as you can get. So, yeah.
And as I think you pointed out, time-wise, him being of a generation where some of what is prevalent now, being closer to his experience when he was playing full-time, versus even some folks who may have vast experience but haven't played in a while. Him being so close to having been a player, in the grand scheme of things, it was refreshing and insightful, and I appreciated having him on and enjoyed what he had to say and how well you two caught on.
Excellent. No, that's good to hear. Hopefully people will, enjoy it too. That's definitely something that is worth watching. But yeah, as for what's happening right now, yeah, we're feeling all that turbulence here too, as well, coming from you guys, and yeah, it's a bit mind-boggling how quickly everything just falls apart, and just the speed of the disaster is I don't think, if somebody would have told me like a year ago that this would be happening, no, I probably would not believe it. But yeah, it's just nuts.
Mm-hmm. And sure as shit, tomorrow there will be more surprises. So
yeah. I got a lot to look forward to. I'm completely perplexed by the development of United States as a country, to be honest, and as a government.
I think development is a really generous word to use.
I just don't want to. I just don't want to say a lot of.
Dismantling is the word I use.
Yeah, I just don't want to say a lot of swear words straight away. Not to cut us off the algorithm, because I don't think there is too many descriptors that can be used in this case, which will not involve cussing.
Oh,
So
I
yeah.
think I looked into it, and since we're not monetized, I don't even think we have to stick to the 4 to 7 minute rule or whatever it was. So we should be good. And I don't want to waste my opportunity to get my swears out there. I haven't really been taking full advantage of it because when I have been on stream previously, it's usually in a space where there is a little bit more decorum. And so I feel
Hmm.
like I'm not getting my money's worth by forgetting until the end to let it loose.
Fair enough. Yeah. No, I think it's just the beginning. What we're looking at right now, it's just the beginning, and unfortunately, I don't see any good outcome. And there's no good ways out right now, and it's a matter of whether it's going to get bad or really bad. So,
Well, we're going to find out.
oh yeah,
One
oh
way
yeah,
or
we
the
will.
other, we're going to find
Yeah,
out.
yeah, absolutely. Well, shall we talk a little bit about football, and then I have a plan of connecting football to certain parts of the war in Ukraine and the
Okay.
situation in Ukraine, because we always talk about how it's actually quite possible to connect football and sports in general to other aspects of our lives, and I think that's something that we can do today. At least,
Okay.
give it a good try.
Well, and we might have a slightly shorter episode, folks, because today the Wales national team, the women's team, is going to be playing in about an hour. So that's something we're bearing in mind when we go through this episode.
Hmm.
So do you want to start then with the 10-minute tasting analysis, which I'm sure will be shorter than even 10 minutes?
Yeah. To be honest, since we missed last week, the last 10 minutes I was supposed to watch was not this game. I think it wasn't even Exeter, from what I understand, right? No, it was Exeter.
I'll tell you honestly, I don't remember.
I watched a little bit of the last game too,
Oh,
not
I
live,
trust
but
you. Let's tell folks
yeah.
what it is in case they have,
Well,
if this is their
look,
first
with
episode.
the going to the game against Exeter, the basic analysis is that Exeter looked really, really bad. It's one of the weakest teams that I have seen. I'm not sure exactly why. I didn't follow their history and their development, but the team didn't look that great. And they looked a lot like a League Two side, and they allowed Wrexham to do a lot. So there was a lot of questions about penalties, whether it was a penalty, not a penalty, over a few games now. And to be honest, the way Wrexham plays, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
It was a penalty, and the next game it wasn't. It all kind of evens out in the end. It's a single goal should hardly ever define the game, or a moment like that should hardly ever define the whole game. What I find more and more is that whenever I watch or analyze the game of Wrexham, it almost feels to me like I watch the same game, and it's just almost like on the loop. And the only thing that changes is just a little bit of a factor of the opposing team. So the games are dictated, and the results of the games are dictated by not what Wrexham is doing, but what the opposing team allows Wrexham to do. So effectively, and a little bit of luck sprinkled in there. Because again, ultimately, I haven't noticed any changes in style, in approach, in tactics, and there is literally apart from sometimes different people play. Like he starts one person, and then even though same 11 start all the time,
Sure.
sometimes there is a new person, and that's probably the only change that I can see. Everything else, like going back to the game against Stockport, I thought that how lucky was it for Wrexham to win this game, because everything pretty much the game was never supposed to be a win like that, and we we got the red card happened against the run of play. The goals were scored, so kind of same story repeated itself. And then game against Wigan, Coney, the best striker of theirs, is not playing for whatever reason, and then the next game after that he does play. Incredibly lucky. I still don't understand how that happened. Wickham just doesn't play the game that they want to play. Wrexham doesn't show anything amazing, and pretty much Wickham does everything they can to lose the game, starting from not fielding their best players to pretty much playing the way they played. And then the game after, the penalty that was not a penalty, people were talking about that. So one event leads to another, and it's just that's why in my head it all kind of morphs into one continuous game of
Perpetual.
of weird events, incidents, and behind all that, at the same time, I don't see any development, any growth as such. Like at the same time, I just see this random number of factors being. It's just like one of those lotteries, when the drum goes round and round with balls in it, and you just watch the balls roll out. It's like, what is going to be this time? And maybe we should. Sometimes I think maybe we should stop playing that lottery game and switch to the actual football, but it just doesn't happen. And the last game against Cambridge, the look, I said it before. If you guys are those who are all for, doesn't matter what we do, doesn't matter how we play, we win, and that's all that matters. If you guys are happy winning this way, you have no right to complain about dropped points. You have no right to complain about bad games. Just shut up. If you are happy about about the team going up, and this thing that team is doing, no, you have only one right, is to celebrate everything, because otherwise you're just lying to everybody and yourselves. So I saw the comments under the videos and on YouTube, and people were again complaining about the team sitting too low, scoring too early, not pushing, not going for the decisive win. It's like, yeah, as if it's never happened before. It's just, and then you look at Parkinson, who I would actually like for a coach for at least once talk to the press and say, look, this was my fault, my mistake. That's on me. I don't remember a single time him saying that. Not a single time. Like there's always somebody else to blame. There's always, and whenever he comes up and says, first half or first so many minutes, we played great. It's like, what game are you watching? Whoever, like, when did Wrexham play great or amazingly or whatever other descriptor you want to use? That never happened. Like, literally, like, why are you saying this? Like, nobody played great. Like, it's been years since Wrexham played great. It's just it's so delusional. And
maybe it's less about them playing, objectively great, and more with what he asked them to do. Maybe more compliance of what he instructed them to do and when they did or didn't deliver it. But I want to make sure to backtrack a little bit, because if someone's listening for the first time, they may not be aware that the 10-minute tasting is an experiment that I came up with for Ivan, because as he has clearly laid out, he finds the play of Wrexham rather monotonous. And the concerns that he has about its sustainability or being future-proof don't seem to be improving or resolved when I think you speak about the bingo basket that gets turned over. I think that's a reflection of how much you've spoken about chance being such a huge factor in Wrexham's ascent, especially this season. Versus when you talked about growth, I really think that you were referring to an evolution, or let's say again, maturation of play towards something less dependent upon chance or independent moments of brilliance, or individual moments of brilliance, I think you've called them. So each week I pull a piece of paper out of our little tin pot, and it's a 10-minute segment that Ivan is assigned to watch in lieu of enduring an entire 90 minutes. And we'll do another drawing for that towards the end of the episode. But I don't know if we've mentioned it, you did do a watch along of an entire match within the last couple of weeks. Now, I'm not going to say I told you so, but
I
you know,
I know. Well, I knew it. I knew it, and oh my goodness, it was painful. Like, and I'm so grateful for those guys who sat through with me and watched it with me because by by everything that's holy, it was just a oh my god, no,
brutal,
pain.
brutal for you.
It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. It's just
Well,
when
so
I
maybe we don't need to expect another one of those from you in the immediate
No,
future.
no, I did my due, and I had to do it. I did it, and no, thank you.
Well, and you gave
Yeah,
it a shot. It confirmed, what you suspected. Now, granted, it's one match, but I don't think that you need to watch every single match to prove your theory that you know to be true for yourself. But it was giving it a go for a full 90 minutes as opposed to a 10-minute segment that totally reinforced for you that you do not need probably even 10 minutes, but I appreciate you participating in the exercise.
no, no, thank you. Don't want to do that again. And actually, answering the question, I think Mardi Gras asked the question about the style changing. No, it's not changing. It's just the opposition allowing the team to do certain things.
That's right. We have questions that were submitted to
Yeah.
you to be answered for this week.
Yeah, the whole, the players, just like we spoke, I guess, going back to Will is saying that he's in he's in transit to Washington D.C. Can't listen now, but
Good luck,
we'll
brother.
definitely watch when he's back. Yeah,
Good luck, man.
Safe travels, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Let us
crazy.
know when you made it, man. Let us know that you made it.
Please do, please do. Yeah. No, look, the the matter of fact is that style doesn't change. The other team allows you to do certain things when you play like that. You will do it, and you will hold the ball for a bit longer. Just like we discussed the situation with Louis, we replaced players with weaker players with stronger players now. One on one, 1v1 on the pitch. Those players are stronger than most players in this league. That allows
You
you
say
for
stronger. What does it mean? Because it doesn't just mean they can lift more weights in the gym room, right? What do you mean when you say stronger players? That they're more skilled or elevated at that role than the other player? What does it mean?
they everything. They literally are faster, stronger, more skilled, played at higher level, more experience. Basically, to sum it all up, when you have somebody who played at a higher level, played more games, and has more exposure to the game at faster speeds, when you go to when you play against weaker opposition at lower league, everything goes into slow mo. So it's like playing in slow mo pretty much, and that's a huge advantage. So even though the team cohesion is not there and people are not really playing a team sport as such, they're playing sort of individual moments. It still gives you a huge advantage. So high caliber players.
Is mental that you're describing is an ability to process what's going on around you, to interpret the data, even if you're older. And that's something that we do tend to have going on with Wrexham is we bring on, experienced players that usually mean they're older and maybe aren't as fast or as quick. I mean, we certainly have the world's exception, in my opinion, with James McLean in a lot of ways, at least as far as endurance and stamina. But so these things can offset, let's say, just flat speed for sprinting, in your opinion,
Yeah,
and still make them a
yeah,
stronger
absolutely.
player?
Well, no, yeah, no, James McLean is a good example. Stephen Fletcher is a good example.
Of course.
Yeah, a lot of people now start hating on Rodriguez, but again, you can see that the guy is when you slot it in a team like that, you're not going to be shining in that role. But he's definitely way better on every level than Palmer. For example, he's a very good player, and he's a step above everybody else essentially in that role who can be playing for Wrexham, and he's probably one of the better players in the entire league in that role. Just objectively, yeah, he's not shining and not scoring a lot of goals right now, but
Well, if the
you.
environment, just like we used to talk about Mulls, we used to have the
Mhm.
same conversation about Paul Mullen, whether or not he was receiving the service or whether or not he had the environment with or without Palmer. That was the formula for his personal traits to score, to have success. So I think that's a really relevant point to bring up, is that, you can still be a great player and not be delivering spectacular performances, because it is still a team sport, and what the other people do impact your ability to perform whatever your task is. And if you've been reassigned from what you used to have as your task, I mean, there are all kinds of factors, but I think there's a real argument towards paralleling comparisons to J-Rod and to Mulls when both were being criticized for a lack of scoring.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, looking at Jay Rodriguez, his touch is better than, like, people are like, I saw some comments on the certain videos, and I think there were people talking about it on Matt's podcast about whether Jay in or Jay out, and you look at it like, well, we know that the way the team plays, the way Parkinson wants to play his football, somebody like Jay Rodriguez has to play, and that, like, I mean, that role has to be present on the pitch. You We can't expect a different approach to the game, and we can't expect a different approach to building an attack. So we have to accept the fact that Jay is going to be playing, and he's better at everything than Palmer. So, faster, he can actually receive the ball, he can shoot, his positioning is better, he's smarter on the pitch because he has to think for himself, and his
And
movement
he
of,
can. And
huh?
that's it being a difference. He has to think for himself, but he's also more capable and more
Yeah.
experienced in having to do that than I think Palmer was at these higher levels.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think it's not even a question. Like, there is, yeah, no comparison whatsoever. But look, to be honest, I feel like we already spoke about it so many times before that I'm kind of just repeating myself. And as for whether they're going to go up, because that's a lot of conversations happening about it too. Um, yes, there is a good chance. Because Wrexham is not dictating any games, you cannot really guarantee anything. Not because of the unpredictability of the league as such, but just because that approaches, like, we always rely on the other team to dictate the game, and we just absorb the damage and see if this time we will be able to absorb without crumbling. So yeah, there is a good chance they will. There is a good chance they won't. It's literally a gamble. It's We're playing a roulette every time, every game. It's a you can go to the casino and play poker where there is a bit of skill involved. Obviously, always luck. In every game, there is a bit of luck, but we don't choose the game which is based on skill at all. We choose the game that's based on chance. So we always play that roulette, red or black. And
And certainly for the at least most fans or for the club itself are happier if they're going to be playing roulette to be playing it closer to the top of the table than, let's say, the bottom. But as I think you've brought up a number of times, there will become a point as people get more accustomed to us, if, let's say, we don't get promoted, where the maturation and sustainability of the team will really need to be addressed if we don't want to languish forever, let's say, in League One, or, God forbid, end up going back and getting it relegated at some point back down to League Two. So, yeah, it's going to be tense. It's going to be tense the coming weeks. Yeah. Every match is the match of the season. We've entered that part of the season. Every match is the match of the season.
That's right. That's right. And it is what it is now. It's too late for anything else like this. The situation was created by the team itself. So there is nobody to blame for that. So yeah.
And we're all going to find out. Only a few more weeks left, and we'll all know.
Yeah. To be honest, there is a big part of me, even though I still think it's probably the worst thing that can happen to the club, is to go up like that in the situation like that. I understand that they're chasing fame, money, and next opportunity, but there is a good part of me that actually just kind of curious of what's going to happen. I understand that with all that financial with all the financial backing that they got, and the results came in, and just showed just how much money the clubs got and how much they're making and how fast they're
Right.
growing, and the
Yeah.
power of stardom again, and blah blah blah. Yeah, it would be just. I'm just curious to see what's going to happen, because that will, who are they going to? Because the entire team will have to be replaced, like literally bar a handful of players. Everybody else needs to be let go, and the entire new team needs to be brought in, which is just, I, I don't think it's a good way to do it. To be honest, it's always better to keep the core and have strong, strong teamwork and strong systems in place rather than just replacing the engine.
Stability.
Yeah, it's gonna that like I witnessed that before with other organizations. When you just replace personnel like that, it kills the soul of the whole project. It's
We're
inevitable.
seeing
Players,
we're seeing a lot of that here stateside at the moment.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
I know for me, one of my concerns about them going up is, and I wish, I love the way you phrased it, kind of about being curious. And if I weren't emotionally invested in the outcome of this, yes, it would be such a terrific, like, intellectual kind of exercise to think about possibilities and be, God, I wish I didn't care, because then it would be a lot more fun to analyze. But my concerns have a lot more to do with the admin side. Things like policies and procedures regarding data security, access for disabled fans to the Kairos, the transparency of what the club is deciding to do, or to the day-to-day operations of being able to obtain tickets, or being able to speak to someone. There's no official complaints process within the club if you have a bad experience. So I can't see that getting better with all the additional ramping up that would accompany a promotion. So, I mean, nothing we
yeah,
do or
yeah,
say influence it,
yeah.
but
No,
like I said, going to find out together. But those are some of my concerns about
there is, just like
sending.
we said before, everything starts from the pitch. If there is no systems on the pitch, there is no system everywhere else. So if you're boosting through everything with very little regard to your surrounding systems, yeah, it's a cool experiment. It is a cool experiment. Now, don't get me wrong, it's an exciting ride. It's like a firework, it
God, I
goes.
wish it was happening in like a vacuum, though. Like, I wish
Yeah, yeah,
shit
yeah, yeah,
was like not happening
yeah.
with people I
Yeah.
care about.
I watched that. I watched that interview with Humphreys, parts of it,
The
with
one with
Humphrey
Ben Foster.
Kerr. Yeah, yeah, and
Okay.
he compared it to a rocket ship. Like we all like, and I was like, no, man, it's not a rocket ship. It's a firework. It's that it goes shh, and then it goes boom,
Hmm.
and rocket comes back or shuttle comes back. You
Well,
guys
they're
are on the fire.
supposed to. We haven't had a whole lot of success with that lately on our side, but I understand that's how they're supposed to work.
Yeah, yeah. So it's. I think it's. I understand the comparison, but I think it's more of a firework because. And look, it's a great experiment, and they will look. The thing is that they will probably figure it out. They just throw enough money at it for the problem to go away. Um, and yeah, they will bring a whole bunch of expensive players, experienced players. They will replace the coach when the time comes. The problem is that when you're doing it this way, just like I said, it kills the soul.
Yeah, the
You
things so much of us loved and were attracted to about the Wrexham story.
and even Kerr, he said that it's of course it's better to get a bunch of what he said normal players have a he said that to he implied to have a proper genius, not genius, but talented coach, and to train them up and to build them into a
Ah,
powerful unit. He said that like of course it would be better, but and then he said but we
that's
chose a
not what we
different
got.
way. No, they chose a different approach, and look, I get it. It's a cool story. I understand, and just like I said, it's a cool experiment, and I part of me wants to see the what is going to happen in the end of it all. But
Yeah,
uh,
I think you and I probably appreciate very different literature, man. 'Cause, like, when you called it that, and you called it a story, I was like, shit, all stories end. Oh no.
Yeah, well, then that's why we talk about future proofness all this time, because
Mhm.
we're, yeah, oh, look, yeah, we spoke about it
Well,
so many
speaking
times.
of rockets, speaking of fireworks, I think you got a question. You've invited folks to submit, of course, questions about football before, but you've
Mhm.
also invited them to submit questions about the world or specifically Ukraine. And I think you got one related to Ukraine this week. What was that?
That was whether people of Ukraine and the country of Ukraine will end up in NATO at some stage or form. I think that the answer is no,
Mm,
purely because NATO in today's format is dead.
mm,
It's a zombie organization that
okay.
has to be reborn. And when it will be reborn and it will change the essence, it will change the people of the countries that will be the part of the new alliance. They will change the approach to all this. It will be born through fire. It will be born through a lot of suffering. And when that happens, yes, Ukraine will be part of that new alliance, of that new organization, but not NATO in its today, in its today's shape and form.
Okay.
And the unfortunately, the like we always say, I mean people who come from sort of harder backgrounds, from third world countries, when you grow up there and you go into a prosperous first world countries and you look around and you see that people are, they lose connection to reality. They understand that everything is great and it's supposed to be that way all the time, and they don't understand uh, the uh, the actual value of what they got.
Like they're insulated from the harsher aspects of reality.
Yeah, that's right. And they take it for granted because it's not because they are so ignorant. It's just because there is no other way. When generation after generation, they grow in that good good atmosphere and they grow up in that positive bubble. There is no way they can objectively look outside and
Well, it
appreciate
becomes
what
their
they.
truth. It becomes
Yes.
their reality, and their experience is, not necessarily knowing they're inside that bubble. Something that I think travel can help with. But please go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, and what we are looking at it right, what we're looking at right now is we the pendulum swung so far towards the world that is sophisticated, when the average human being needs to understand the needs to understand technology, needs to understand way uh, the way people need to be respectful to one another on every level, needs to understand tolerance, needs to understand why it's okay to be different. People need to understand how the universe works. Like we have to we have to have an idea of where we live in the world, where our place is in the just like I said, in the cosmos, in the universe. It's not just the man on the cloud anymore. We have to know certain terms
Are
and
you
the
saying this
sense.
because did you see the AAA video?
No, 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 no. I'm not.
You
So
you want to go back and
we
watch the AAA video
the
where
political
half the
the
team
political
basically are flat earthers?
the political structure. The average human being needs to understand how the country is actually ran, how the trade system works around the globe. They need to understand what's inside your phone, how that operates. Basically, you need to understand the principles of modern technology. And average person is very, very dumb. And sooner or later, what happens is that the information and the world around them becomes so sophisticated and difficult that people instinctively strive back to simplicity. We want a primitive, strong leader, essentially a dictator, to say this is good and this is bad. We want the man on the cloud because it's easy to understand that, this is we don't want to know about universe and ever expanding space and how the planet flies through it, and we don't want to know all the complex stuff. People go back, they revert back to primitive, and that's where they feel comfortable, and that's the stage that we're going through right now. It's gotten so complicated with every layer that surrounds us, that people are striving to go back to simplicity, go back to primitivism.
I do have a couple of things I want to mention. I think that sometimes it's not just that people are dumb. I think a better word would be whether or not they are teachable. Now, that can come from like a capacity to learn is something that I think can be innate, because we all learn to walk, we all learn to talk, all these other things, right? Whether or not you grew up in an environment that encourages further learning or acquisition, the value of knowledge, absolutely shapes people's experiences. I think that there's a big factor in, yes, there's technology. Yes, there's some things that have become, more complex. I don't feel that we need to know all the, I don't have to be an engineer, an electrical engineer, as well as, a health scientist or things like that. A big point of making some of this tech user friendly does, by, I think, design, keep the power within the business side, the capitalist side of promoting these things that make money, and to have folks not think about anything but immediacy. We've had it with fast food. It doesn't have to be tech. There are a lot of cultural phenomena that if it's quick, if it fulfills my immediate need, which gets me into whether or not they're connected, they don't care. Maybe not because they're dumb, maybe they're lazy, whatever. But the question comes down to, I think, when you speak about primitive concerns, is more direct. And how does this impact me? If my daily life doesn't have something I can recognize or measure with the cosmos, with, other parts of the world impacting my daily life, regardless of what country you're in, I think that in a developed country, is certainly a wealthy country, that comes into play. I'm not saying it can't be both by any
No,
means.
no. I'm just you are I agree with you 100%. I think what I couldn't explain myself too well. I think what is happening is that the reason everybody, the masses who voted for example, in your case, guys, for Trump, they all are hooked on conspiracy theories, and that's what I mean. You need to understand. You need to understand the basic facts and truth in science and knowledge
understand
behind you have to, but what they want, they want to believe in the conspiracy theory that the microwave will be bad for you, that 5G towers are radiating you, that that's, you have to have a simple
subscribe to pseudoscience than to do the work.
Exactly. And then you have them, then you have those uneducated, poorly educated masses who don't want to know those things, but they are quick to jump into conspiracy theory. That's what I mean. They want something simple, because conspiracy theory is always easier. It's simpler than the actual scientific truth.
It's always somebody else's fault. Like, I know you've mentioned it with Parky, with blame shifting on, his responsibilities. It's very convenient when you aren't even held to a reporter for your club, and you have a bad day, or your finances aren't doing well, and you want to feel in control. I think that's another factor of folks who do not feel that they have enough influence and power in their own lives, according to their own minds and values, can manufacture it by creating scapegoats, by creating scenarios.
So then that's what I mean. Instead of actually developing the knowledge of the factual knowledge, going just a little bit in depth to just understand basics about the world, and that will inevitably lead to realization that you don't have to blame somebody else, because once you connect the dots, it's like, okay, so we can't really just scapegoat everybody. You have to be responsible and accountable for your own actions and deeds. People don't want that. People want simple.
No.
People want it's uncomfortable. People want the shortcut. They want that conspiracy, and that's how those people like Musk and Trump and Putin and everybody else. That's how they come to power, because they simplify things for the plebs. They simplify it. They make it very, very straightforward. It's like, this is what's good, this is what's bad. Like we you will be richer, we will take them, we will tariff everybody because everybody has to give us the money, and you will get richer, they will get poorer. These guys are not good, we'll kill them. Those guys are good, we'll invite them and they will be working with us. It's just, it becomes very reactive, and people
Well,
get it.
and we know throughout history that people are much easier to persuade when they want to believe that anyway, that they have someone reinforcing their wishes verbally with some semblance of legitimacy, as proof, in reverse of the scientific method, right? Having it in
Yeah.
right. And I do think that it also matters. Access is also an issue. When we talk about teachability, we talk about whether or not someone is even aware of how to identify a credible source when there used to be more of them lying around. I like to
And
spin
look,
this so that it's not just politics, but just as the idea of therapy, doing one's work and being uncomfortable. You can have wealthy people with a lot of access to resources and education, or you can have someone middle class or poor, and they go see a therapist to talk about their problems or their traumas, right? A lot of people don't like therapy. They think it's a hack, or they say that it is, but what really happens is a lot of folks get very uncomfortable because what you talk about for accountability for one's actions, instead of being able to always blame someone else, even if some parties absolutely deserve blame, right? To take the accountability of how you're going to respond to it, how you behave and how it's influenced by others without even, that is work. That is actual work. And from having experienced it myself, damn, to have to see myself other than how I had been going through life seeing myself was disappointing.
yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah,
look,
and
and
not everyone can handle it.
on that note is, a lot of the people will say, well, democracy is not ideal either, and it's, yeah, absolutely, it's even in the American interpretation of democracy, it's well corrupted, it's got a lot of flaws. But the thing is that in the democracy, you don't have somebody like Trump, for example, who openly says, I want to be a dictator for a day. Once you get somebody in and he's a dictator for a day, that crumbles hundreds of years of democracy straight away. There is no such a thing as a dictator for a day. Dictator for a day is a dictator forever, because it ruins. You will soon, before long, you will realize that all of a sudden the your freedom of speech is gone, your freedom of expression is gone, and it takes that one day. And with democracy, you at least you have it, just like with when you actually playing mm, a style of football, for example, that is relying not only on bullying, physical force, brute force, and long balls, but something that is creative, that is combinational, and something that actually requires a little bit of cohesion and teamwork. Same within the democracy, you have institutes, you have systems that will at least slow certain things down and will give you time to prepare, to react, and to fix certain things. When
Ideally.
in a at least you have a chance. At least you stand a chance. In a dictatorship, you will be taken from the country, thrown into Venezuelan or whichever prison, being a gay hairdresser or whoever that guy
Yeah.
was, without due process, into the hands of hundreds of gang members who is going to kill you and rape you. And there will be no lag between that, because all of a sudden that one guy said that all of you guys now are going out of the country, and because all of you are gang members and you don't have a chance to defend yourself. And that analogy, that what happened to that poor guy, is very, very vivid and applicable to literally every layer of the government life and society, because this is what's going to happen to you all. It happened to one person, this will next tomorrow that will happen to you.
When I think about the prevalence, just from the tattoos are being identified as like major descriptor of the folks being involved, the folks who are being rounded up, without due process and segregated from society. Body art is being used as proof of gang membership or other criminal behavior. And what really struck me, only because I've been following Wrexham, was one gentleman who had also been basically kidnapped. he had been seized. Well, so there are some gangs that have different kinds of symbolism and whatnot. Well, he had a crown tattoo, but his was for Real Madrid. He's a football fan, and that's what his tattoo is for. When we think of all the Wrexham tattoos that our friends have, and another man allegedly had one on his arm in honor of his mother. I don't know if it was because her name was Reina or because she was the queen or, whatever. But yes, this could be its own, other episode, but I just wanted to circle back.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even like I understand where the perfect example of those tattoos, but in this case, it's not even about the tattoo. Tattoo was just it was just a reason. If it wasn't for a tattoo,
it
it
applies
would
to
be
more Americans now because it used to be that tattoos were more taboo, and there are so many people running around now with them, so much more prevalent. I think that gives them maybe a little bit more pause than, oh shit, this could happen to me too, than it would otherwise. But yeah.
I don't think they connect those dots, to be honest. That's but if it's not a tattoo, it will be a hair color, eye color, I don't know, a piece of clothing. Don't worry, they will find a reason. It's just I'm talking about the basic principle. Let's move on to comparing. I came up with a few points of comparison in between the war in Ukraine and the and Wrexham, actually. And
hold on 1 second, because I had this great idea that I forgot about when that evolved. When you were talking about the institutions and whether or not, we kind of comparing it to football and whatnot, I was thinking to myself, okay, but then you've got the refs and the linos, right? But those refs and those linos, if they're going to be the judges or the barriers between, how this style of football is being played, but they're afraid, much like in real life, to make certain kinds of calls and back and forth of what they allow or don't, because they don't want to be killed in the parking lot afterward, right? So I think that you're right in there. We could really take that analogy, to a certain level of almost using it as a tool, and I think that was really insightful.
Well, Russia under Putin over 30 something years now, they still have judges, they still have police, they still have media and other I guess elements and other features of the civilized country and the society, but they are just fiction. They are fake. They don't work. So same happens here. You still have your refs, but they will be doing what they are told to do.
Can I just have one more thing before you go into your next segment that I wanted to touch back on regarding NATO? Mardi Gras question, because something that bothers me a lot was, besides that, I'm not sure that everyone understands what NATO is. I'm sure they can look it up, and how Russia has obstructed, and influenced part of why it's been difficult for Ukraine to be accepted into the current version of NATO as it stands, regardless of how effective it is as an entity or not, especially given the US's change in politics over recent years. One thing that I don't think a lot of people know about, maybe because they're not old enough, maybe they just didn't have access to the background, and that it hurts it pains me physically. I can feel it in my chest right now, just crushing something inside of me, that in the 90s, the US was part of, a number of, I think it was also Russia, I think it was the United Kingdom as well, when we were seeking to get rid of nukes on the planet and to try and minimize what countries would have them, because we had across the planet enough to blow up the world 1 million times, whatever the math was. The United States persuaded Ukraine, who had damn good reason to maintain nuclear weapons, to ensure their own protection after the fall of the Iron Curtain. And we said to them, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but officially we said to them, you don't got to do that, guys. We got your back. You don't need your own fucking nukes. You don't need these assets, because if you ever have a problem, America, and I guess the other entities, but I'm not holding them accountable to theirs. America said, we got you, bro. And then this happens, and our response has been shameful. I mean, there are some things, that at least were done. But I mean, when you think about, we contributed to putting them in this position. I don't know what the world would look like if they'd had nukes all the time. But that is part of what absolutely infuriates me and makes me feel ill. I feel nauseated, is knowing that I don't expect a lot of honor from our country, but just that we told someone they'd be okay. We told a
No, no,
country,
no,
we
no,
told
no, no.
millions of people
You
they'd be
didn't
all
just
right.
tell them they'd be okay. Okay, you signed a treaty, an agreement that you will come to
Mhm.
rescue and
Hey,
defend
yeah,
in
we'll
full
do it for you.
force.
Just get rid of your nukes.
Not just
Don't
for
have
you.
nukes.
You said that you will come in full force and you will be fighting with full force of your military defending sovereign borders of a country. That country gave up its nuclear arsenal based on that treaty.
Yeah,
And when
because they
when
believed
Trump
it.
when Trump said a few weeks back that we gave you javelins, you can shove those javelins up your ass because you signed a treaty that you will defend the borders and the sovereign country of Ukraine against any foreign invasion. And Russia signed that treaty too. So they break the treaty not only
Well, yeah, I
by
mean, like, we don't expect anything from them anyway, but it's like, who's going to hold them to account? They don't recognize international criminal courts. They're still on the Security Council at the UN, as regardless of whether or not you see the UN as an entity of any value. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure I got that in because I didn't know that until the full invasion. I didn't know that till
uh-huh.
22. Um,
Mhm.
and so I'm convinced that most of Americans don't know that information either. And when you think about the response that our society, or at least our warriors, our military service people, in how we left Afghanistan and the agony that so many of them felt towards who had been their interpreters, who had been their guides, who had been, their colleagues and help that they left behind, being compared to those in Vietnam, leaving Saigon, who felt that in this institution and culture where your word is your bond and America's better than other countries and we have honor, and that they're haunted by this and they will go to their graves haunted by what was done in the pullout of Afghanistan. And yeah, sorry, I think I just went off a little bit on a rant
No,
on that,
no, it's
but
essentially it's the same. The root cause is the same. It's you have to. Um, we are looking at a development similar to, just like I said before, to the World War II, when it will take somebody like Churchill in a situation like what UK had, what England had, um, facing off against Nazi Germany. It will have to go down to that kind of level of crisis for people to understand that you cannot reason with the criminal, with the evil of this world. You cannot talk to them. You cannot make them your friends. You cannot enable them. You cannot hold any kind of
they're not
negotiation
motivated
talks
for
with
those
them.
things. They're motivated for things, and other people get in the way of achieving their goals. Humanity gets in the way of achieving their goals. And so, but some people feel they need to go through the process to remain legitimate, in their own countries or in the eyes of the world. But it is a lot of time that's getting lost and a lot of people that are dead in, following procedure. So it's messy, and I will
Yeah.
move it along to the points you were trying to make for your project that you were going to introduce, because we're 53 minutes in and I don't want to keep you from sharing whatever
No,
gems
it's
you have.
I thought about a few points of comparison in between the
Okay,
war in Ukraine and
tell me.
how it can be related. Well, for example, when every time we talk about a primitive long ball game that Wrexham
Uh-huh.
is playing, basically unstructured long ball strategy, we can't really be called a strategy, but and it lacks
A
it
practice.
lacks yeah, it's just a practice. It lacks any kind of nuance, any kind of sophistication, any kind of tactical base. Well, when when Russia invaded Ukraine, they pretty much used that same blunt force and
Okay.
overwhelming numbers, shock and awe tactics in their version, with long columns of tanks rolling into towards Kiev. And both of those situations, they rely on brute force, on
Okay.
bully tactics over precision, and they both fall apart when you are facing a well prepared and adaptable opponent. So yeah.
Real quick factor.
Hmm.
Style of leadership. Western military and the allowance of being able to make a decision on the ground as like a squad leader versus Russian or Soviet, I guess I should say it, style, because some can still be prevalent in post-Soviet countries of
I
all decisions are made at the top. But
don't worry, I will get back to I
yes,
will
okay.
get to that. I have a few points here. So then winning because you have better players and more of better players. The famed depth of the bench, right? So if
Okay.
somebody gets injured, we have somebody to replace it with of the similar caliber.
Okay.
In the beginning of the war, Russia counted on superior manpower, bigger, better stockpiles of ammunition, resources, not superior planning, and not superior tactics.
Mm-hmm.
Just like in case of the Wrexham, Russia, expected to win based on the strength and carry on advancing through through the continuation of war, relying on that. But just like in case of football, when you are met with a clever, agile opponent, your weaknesses are quickly exposed because
Mm.
all of a sudden, your depth and the price tag on your equipment or your players becomes irrelevant when you face a superior tactics.
Which will
Uh,
psychologically rattle you. Not only will it make it easier for them to work around you, but you are become aware of these holes in hopefully the same time that your opponents do. And your ability to adapt or compensate is
yeah,
important. And if you
absolutely.
can't, then your world gets rocked, your confidence is shot, and you make even worse decisions. Let's think about EOC on a bad
Hmm.
day.
Hmm.
When he flips a lot or the ball gets by him and he has trouble recovering, being centered, and having a still mind. He struggles with that on the pitch in real time versus someone else.
Precisely. Absolutely. Like I can't even, yeah, nothing else to add there. That's exactly what it is.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad I could
No,
help.
no, no, but another point would be
Uh-huh.
the results that are dictated by the opposition. I said that phrase a
Okay.
few times
Mm-hmm.
before. Wrexham doesn't control games; they react. If the other
Okay.
team plays badly, Wrexham wins. Um, Parallel with the war, Ukraine battlefield tactics, they dictate the tempo and the outcome of the Russian forces advancing. They put Russian forces into a reactive position. We have seen that during the counteroffensive in Kherson and the way they defended the fortresses of Avdiivka and Bakhmut and many other battles. Russia is reactive. Wrexham is reactive. They're not dominant. They win when their position is underperforming, but not when they excel themselves at certain. So that's I think those 2 points are very much comparable. It's being on the back foot and being allowed to do certain things, or coming up with something original, something never drones, for example, the way you move around the battlefield, the way you deliver the payload to the potential target. If you come up with something original never seen before, all of a sudden, all the other things, all the other advantages that stronger opposition has become irrelevant. So
Well,
I
and
think
that
that's it.
makes me think any American listener might be able to equate that as well to the American Revolution, where the implementation of what are considered guerrilla tactics versus the
Hmm.
gentlemanly, old world style of, line up, put all your muskets out, shoot on one, and then, reload, where it was more of a rhythm versus tactics could
Right.
be, applied to this. Now, what I think is this might be a real good moment for us to say, we do not think that Wrexham AFC are Russia. As I'm thinking through
No.
some of what you're saying, I'm seeing even more parallels in my mind. Like, I don't know if you're planning to get to media and press and, the having a veil over what happens in the background and only what's officially put up front. But I could see some parallels there with like how Wrexham interacts with media. We are simply using these as a way of something we can all relate to as Wrexham fans, behaviors or history that we know the club has to help put into context some other behaviors. And as Ivan has said before, there are a lot of parallels between sport, which is, war, during peacetime, and war, which is sport during wartime.
We always talk about that we're comparing sports and football to real life. That's what we do
Yes,
here.
but
We're
again,
trying to build parallels.
especially if someone's listening for the first time, this is not
Yeah.
us saying that Wrexham is Russia. These
No.
are vehicles to illustrate points.
We've done it with Nazi Germany before, right? So we ran through
Be
historical
sure to
examples.
go and check out that episode.
Yeah. So now the next one is no tactical flexibility. Okay. So
Ooh,
football,
okay.
Wrexham has no plan B. Plan B is more of plan A, right? They stick to one approach no matter the situation, and just keep going.
So they're capable of a plan B. They're capable of it, but they haven't been trained in it, so it doesn't exist. They have the skills; they could do it.
Russia's, and talking about that comes from the top, from the command structure. So in case of the war, Russia command structure has shown very poor flexibility, very poor adaptation, often sticking to outdated Soviet era tactics and strategies. They don't respond well to asymmetric Ukrainian strategies when they think on the fly. Same happens with Wrexham. Rigid, no plan B doctrine falls when the environment changes. Tactical agility wins wars and wins matches and wins in the long term, wins you a successful. You don't just become successful within a certain season or getting a promotion, but you become successful and future-proof long-term for years to come. And that not only happens on the pitch, but also with the infrastructure around, academy, various buildings, and other departments of the organization. So that all comes into play there. So that's next point that I have here. No lack of identity and no long-term plan. The style of Wrexham right now does not evolve. It's a short-termisms. Let's put it this way. Promotion is a destination, and that is the philosophy in a nutshell. We deal with everything else later. Get through the promotion, forget about it. We're gonna deal with over the summer, whatever
Kick
that
the
happens.
can down the road.
Exactly. Russia's war goal was to, I think the propaganda named it as denazification and the regime change in Kyiv. Territorial grabs. They want to grab the territory at the same time with no clear end game or coherent post-conflict vision. So what is going to happen, even if theoretically you get there and you grab the territory and you do topple the regime over? How are you going to live in this world after this?
What you've conquered?
How are you going to hold? How are you going to connect to the outside world after you've done all that? So both situations, you trapped in the reactionary loop, so to speak. You pushing forward without a clear, sustainable strategy. You ultimately exposing yourself to failure, like later on, because that's the analogy of that rocket ship, or I'd rather say a firework. Keep climbing up until it goes boom. So I think that's it's quite a issue. I'm thinking about it even more. It's quite a valid point. I always talk about, if you celebrate this, you can't complain when it falls. Okay, so that I keep on getting back to that. Fans who cheer for ugly wins have no argument when the same system leads to a loss.
Okay.
Ultimately. Parallel with the war. If a state relies on propaganda, it claims everything is going according to plan, like Russia did, then you cannot justify the retreat, failure, or massive casualties without shattering your own narrative. Mm-hmm. Okay? In both situations, you are the hostage to your own public positioning. Okay. if you glorify unsustainable wins and you start being and you develop pride in it,
Mhm.
you also own your own defeat in long term, and you don't have the right to separate those, because then you really become a epitome of dishonesty.
Mhm.
Does it make
Well, I
sense?
mean, that would have to bother you.
Yeah, kind of.
And it
Kind of.
also, it's not even just like believing in it, but to control the message on such a level and to be able to source it from the way that you fleece, the masses and the funds, to be able to throw money at people, to declare something a victory, to compensate families in some way, and to have so much showmanship and pageantry, while at the same time creating, based on this lie, based on this complete charade, it's smoke and mirrors, upward
Mhm.
mobility by people who are ruthless enough, because merit isn't really the basis of ascendancy, it is dominance. So you create upward mobility for different classes to achieve some modicum of power, even though it's built on sand and, well, loyalty or perceived loyalty. That's an additional, component to keep this perpetual puppet show, or not even, the shadow
Yep.
puppets
Yep.
where they go
Yep.
behind the screen.
Yep.
It's more like that,
Yep.
where keep that going of, oh yes, this is what it is. You can't see behind, you only see the silhouette, but people fight harder to get a piece of the pie when there's so little pie, and they will kill people and they will die if they're not important enough. They will die fighting to keep their piece of pie once they've gotten it, if they didn't have pie before. So I think that also lends itself to, it's not one person sustaining this, it is a culture that has gone on for a long time. It's what allowed the Soviet Union to become the Soviet Union. It pre-existed this style of people who did not have access to what they need for a sustainable daily life, for health, for food, for shelter, things like that, and what was built on their backs. Certainly, the United States, different, are built on other people's backs in a different way. Like there is no developed country that has not exploited others through its history, 100%. But
Absolutely.
yeah, the ability to go up through the Russian ranks, especially given the relatively short lifespan of some of the higher ups, is motivation for them to continue to buy into a story that they, what do they care if it's going to get them a better apartment or their kids in better schools or whatever, sports car.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just like
That's
you
a
said.
gross oversimplification.
Yeah.
But if it
History
helps
shows
in people's
us.
minds.
History shows us that the episodes, shorter or longer episodes of exploitation, they do happen, and it's almost an inevitable part of the development of the civilization and society and a socium. But what happens after is what's important: the atonement, the realization, the self-reflection, and the measures that are taken to prevent that from happening again. That's what is important, not repeating it year after year. Let's And that leads me to my next
Okay.
point, which is the structure slash style. They matter. It's how you win
Uh-huh.
that what builds the legacy. It's not the fact of winning, it's how you win.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the countries, going back to wars and other conflicts, not full scale wars, but Cold Wars and other conflicts that happen around the globe. A lot of the countries won and achieved certain results over the history. But what defines is that how it was achieved, whether it was through meat waves and high attrition, or whether it was through groundbreaking new invention and new word in the approach to warfare, be it hot warfare or cold warfare. Trophies in football, for example, are one thing, and promotion is one thing,
Mm-hmm.
but how you play defines your club's culture and legacy.
Okay.
It's
Their
how it's
values.
how It's how you get there. In the war parallel right now, Ukraine defense is built on resilience, adaptability, the value of the unity of the country. It will shape their national identity for centuries to come. The international relationship will be supported by that identity for decades and hundreds of years because they established that identity on the world stage.
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine that we knew before the war is gone. New Ukraine is coming around, and it will be established, and and people will recognize Ukraine as a completely new entity from now on.
Mm-hmm.
Victory without honor or vision doesn't build you anything. It's it's how you win that defines what comes after your win.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that makes sense. So,
Oh,
and that's again
100%.
going tying back to future proofness. So winning short term, winning now is only one small part of the puzzle. It's what happens after and how your identity develops from that. That that separates you from a sustainable and future proof organization. Um, that that's the difference between the firework and a and an airplane that
Well,
goes up and then
your legacy, and the opportunity to have one. Are you a villain or are you the hero? It might be a little bit simplistic, but nobody's going to want to play with you if your way of winning the cup, let's say, was to, lie, cheat, steal, murder. No one's going to want to enter that tournament with you, in the rest of the world. So there are real life consequences if it's in business, or if we use the analogy of the pitch. I think that's a very fair observation and keen. Do you have some more?
nope, that's it. I think
Okay,
that's enough.
cool.
I do have
I have
more,
a
but I
couple.
think that's enough for today.
All right, I have a couple points that I want to make real quick then,
Yep,
because
yep.
something that I don't know how it would slot in, and maybe you'll mention it when you pick up some of these topics later. One of the things that Russia did not plan for or anticipate, and I think some of that has to do with short-sightedness and the study of culture, other cultures, and how much value is placed upon that or was placed upon that within internal intelligence. So, the KGB version, whatever it is today. Of course, there are lots of people in this country who focus on Ukraine's connections to the Soviet Union in the past and culturally, how there are some carryovers instead of focusing on the side of them that makes them different from Russia, which is how much more European they have become since the wall came down. And even before that, that is the one that should be focused on what makes them different from Russia, not the fact that they have so much shared common heritage, but what they chose to do when they were given, more autonomy and more freedom. Is it completely flawless? No, because when you live in a place that for centuries has a certain way of doing business, as China does in particular, as some aspects of Latin America do, of how business is done. And I say business, not just money, but what is expected culturally of right, wrong, value systems, things like that, and how decisions are made and what worlds are built on. So the ignorance of something so small that should have been very obvious to anyone who paid attention of. You remember the Z tanks were going into Ukraine. You had all these young guys to be, what are called bullet sponges, cannon fodder, who are
Hmm.
going into these towns, villages, cities to burn, pillage, kill, destroy. And they start running in the streets into little old ladies, octogenarians, little old Ukrainian grandmas in their 80s, 70s, who are hunched over, wearing traditional scarves, wearing sweaters. It's fucking February. They're wrapped up. It's still cold, with canes. And they're screaming at these young men, these 18, 20-year-olds, 23-year-olds who have been sent to this glorious acquisition of land, to the fictitious history of Russia's boundaries, that they're going to achieve glory and prominence for their family when they come home and get their reward. And they're confronted, these big tanks that murder without reason. And I remember asking the question, why are they just killing these little old ladies? My God, they killed, the young, strong people. They killed kids. Because when these little old ladies were screaming at these young Russian soldiers, They were rebuking them, cursing them, challenging them in Russian. Because these women come from an age where they lived in the Soviet Union, and their language that they were allowed to speak was only Russian, in servitude to the function and identity of the Soviet Union. So these young men from Russia weren't necessarily seeing an what do you call your opponent? An enemy. They're not seeing a little old enemy. What they're seeing is their own grandma screaming at them in Russian. So that is a mind fuck that they were not prepared for, that led to things like trying to drive tanks around little old ladies, a little bit Tiananmen Square style from, China in the 80s. And something so insignificant that was deemed insignificant by Russia, if they had thought of it, because they didn't prioritize like cultural lessons of what to expect before you get out there, right? Based on truth, led to a lot of disruption on a micro level. When these soldiers face to face came across all these grandmas who would either disrupt, change their minds, slow them down because of something as simple as language, which brings me to my next point. When we talk about preparation, and you might have this also planned for another one of your points, and how we compare Wrexham to the inflexibility of Russian military aspects and the lack of sustainability and future-proofness. Because, Rob and Ryan do not have the financial resources of Russian oligarchs to keep this show going. It's definitely. One thing people don't necessarily know that well is that, of course, Ukrainian, like the country, is not Russia. Ukrainian language is not the Russian language. It's not even the closest language to Russian. I think that's Belarusian by percentages of shared letters and things like that. What you had is an adaptability in some cases when being attacked. And again, cultivated since the fall of the wall, because language is identity. There's so many cultures that can relate to, especially in Wales, with the Welshonat, the protection of language, because it being eradicated takes away a country or a group's history. The fact that Ukrainians can speak Ukrainian and Russian in most cases, because they have family on the other side of the border, their grandma, or the history. Most Russians can't speak Ukrainian. Most Russians are not bilingual, but most Ukrainians are, especially the further west you go, or I guess, further right. So something as simple as that, being able to have a plan B for language, using it to filter. So somebody from a distance, you're not sure, because we got two groups of people who look a lot alike physically. And from a distance, hey, buddy, and you have a word, it's been used in other countries. In particular, I'm thinking of one in Haiti, in some of the conflicts, I think it was in the 1930s, between I think it was the Parsley Massacre, between the DR, the Dominican Republic, and Haiti. From afar, say this word. In that case, it was parsley. And how it was pronounced in response would reveal whether or not you had practiced saying that word in the native tongue. And if you said it wrong, bang, you're dead. So it was bred in Ukraine, wasn't it? That your accent, what was it?
The word is, and even I can't pronounce it. It actually comes.
We should also note, not every Ukrainian speaker was a born Ukrainian speaker. As part of the resistance, a lot of folks came later or with more practice to Ukraine.
Western. We're talking about Western Ukraine. So the word is palanita. So some people say it means.
When I say it, I sound Russian too. So
it's because filter. It's a very slight difference. Yeah, there is a very slight difference. There actually means it's a certain berry similar to strawberry, but there are other meanings of that word too.
Oh, okay. So, and maybe like in other places, depends on where you live. And the last point I just wanted to make, when we speak about identity, and I appreciate the comments that you have made. I don't know if you've ever heard it. I don't know if it actually exists outside of the United States. But when we talk about identity, one thing that also bothers me about the word that maybe doesn't get spoken about much, and maybe a lot of folks don't know about, the Midwest in the United States, most Americans will have heard as being termed the breadbasket of the world. That, we make all this grain and, I don't know, allegedly supply it to the world and whatnot. What a lot of people don't know is the similarities. I mean, they even have a sunflower for their national flower, the similarities, not just with Kansas, but with the Midwest. The amount of grain that full-scale invasion Ukraine used to produce, that so much of the underdeveloped world depends on, that is now scattered with mines. That is a breadbasket of the world. And I had some numbers written down somewhere. Maybe the next time we talk about it, I can bring those in. So things like corn, wheat, things that keep people alive. We're talking about stores that would be purchased by the World Food Program, by other humanitarian entities to be delivered to, let's say, Haiti, Darfur, Sudan, Myanmar, just places where aid would go where people cannot reliably feed themselves. That, as soon as February 22 happened, that was completely interrupted and disrupted, and continues to have an impact today on what's available and the pricing of being able to feed starving people in other parts of the world. So when we have a lot of focus on Ukraine as a conflict, I don't want our listeners to think that it's just because they're white people and they're European and we have preference over that. A lot of my perspective, I have a lot of feelings about it, but one that's extremely important to me that doesn't get a lot of coverage, or hasn't really since the full-scale invasion, is its impact on the world at large, not just from a freedom standpoint of democracy and being the barrier between us and Russia, but from what they used to provide to the world that kept parts of the world alive on a daily basis. Forget USAID being dispelled, forget all that. Ukraine was making grain that went out and fucking fed people. And people have died needlessly since 22, not just because they were killed by Russians, but because their access and the ability to deliver to them life-sustaining food through appropriate channels was diminished. So, sorry, I was probably a little louder.
People died aimlessly since 2014.
Yes,
that's when the war started.
You're on my den. And one thing we'll bring up that I didn't get, because I was looking, the number of football players, Ukrainian football players, I don't have it specifically for football players, but it's been over 500 Ukrainian athletes who have died since 22 from the full-scale invasion. And I'm going to work on getting some names. I had two from, I think, March 1st. That may have been the two first reported footballers that were Ukrainian that were killed in 22. And, in their early 20s, young men who played football, but I'll make that a project that I'll work on to get some identification on that. But
thousands of athletes, males and females,
artists,
and artists, dancers, just normal people like you and me. It's
teachers.
And everybody, absolutely everybody. And just think about it, folks. Every time somebody enables Putin again in talking to them or trading, just think about that for a second. When talking about languages, that we have to remember that Russia, being an aggressive empire, plagued the countries and areas surrounding Russia with the Russian language. If you look at Africa and those countries who speak French, they did not choose their language because they wanted to speak it, right? So
no, they did not.
That's the remnants of the empire, and that's what
we're talking about colonization, folks.
Like brutal colonization with
imposing upon others.
Genocide. That's what Russia lives on. That's a Russian natural treasure, is genocide. If there is one universal rule through hundreds and thousands of years of Russian history, they really like genocide. That's what they do every time they go into their neighbor's country, and they always go into the neighbor's country.
Genocide, some people have a really narrow definition for that term and how they think of it. But when you think about erasing a people, it doesn't have to just be taking their breath and their heartbeat, like that they die. When you erase a people, you can do it by stealing their language, part of imposing. People are easier to control when they don't have access to other ideas. So you don't have church because God might be a better reward. Soviet Union, where churches weren't allowed. I remember it was such a big deal to wait, Russians can go to church again? Yeah, but I'm old enough to remember that. When you have things that compete from your dictator's power, your dictator is God. The only purpose you serve is to the state. So everything that could be conceived as a distraction from those goals are taken away. So there is no identity. Your brothers and sisters are your comrades. It doesn't matter if you're from Bosnia. It doesn't matter if you're from Kazakhstan. We're all the same. When Because if we strip away your identity, you're easier to control. And it doesn't take long, maybe a generation, people who've known nothing other than that, then those truths that have been espoused as propaganda that's been espoused as truths is their reality. And we're back to the front of the show when we were talking about Americans and what they learn and grow up with, their willingness, their teachability, and how it leads to us having Trump in office right now. So we went longer than I had planned for us to.
Just wanted to say that Matt from Racecourse Ramble popped in a few minutes ago and said hi.
Oh,
So,
that was very nice of him.
He's about to have
he got it. He came in for the hot stuff.
No, it's not the hot. No. I refuse to call it hot stuff. It's anybody with a little bit of wisdom.
I don't mean like hot, like we're impassioned about it. Like this is stuff that some people would consider incendiary, maybe language, but definitely wasn't Wrexham house. We weren't talking about Parky.
Anybody with a little bit of wisdom behind them, anybody with a little bit of critical thinking behind them, will understand exactly what we're talking about. And if people don't, that's just not the place for them.
And
that's it.
If they have questions and they want more clarification, they can of course submit them to us on our Instagram page. Of course, you can leave them here on YouTube, but we won't necessarily have as easy access to them for Ivan to address next time. But we invite,
and for you too, because you address as much as I do as well. Like right now, you were talking so much good stuff. Like all I had to do was to listen.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry, I just kind of got lost in my rant, but I have big feelings about things sometimes. So folks, if you do have questions, if there are aspects of this conversation that you would like us to touch on with more clarity or depth, or that makes you think of something else, please, football or Ukraine related, please submit them on the Instagram page, which is iWords and Upwards on Instagram. But now we've gone over, we still need to play Everything is Football. Ivan, are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, folks, if this is your first time, Everything is Football is a game that I created because I had such confidence that no matter what I could present Ivan with, some weird random object, he'd be able to somehow turn it into football or how it's related to football. And he has not let me down yet. We have had some terrific answers, have learned some aspects about the sport and culture that I certainly didn't know beforehand. And it continues to thrill me as I brainstorm before every episode what to bring. So he has no prior knowledge of what I'm going to show him. And after I show him the item, he will say how he feels it relates to football. Item number 1. A remote control. Like for your television or something like that, for folks who aren't watching or can't see, it's a black remote control to a television. Ivan, how is a remote control football?
Remote control is, in my head, whenever I think about a football coach, I always compare football coach to a remote control. It's in my head. It's even as a tool, as something that can be visualized and personalized. A coach, be it football, hockey, other sport, is a remote control, because you press the button and the things happen things happen on a device that's not directly connected to you. It's in the distance and it's magic. And it's like you have that capability of changing channels, changing settings, adjusting things.
Yeah.
With the press of a button, pretty much. So yeah, as if by magic.
As like a coach being able to affect that with players, if the television is the pitch and the players, that they can change the story from a comedy to a tragedy or to whatever in the finest
brightness
of ways.
Brightness of the screen, focus of the picture, going from black and white to sepia to full color, decreasing and increasing volume, changing channels.
Even by one segment at a time. Like that's pretty precise if you're that gifted of a coach to not just change it, but to scale up or down how much. Like that's almost making me think of a conductor in an orchestra being able to get that kind of precision. So thinking of that on a football pitch. And I used to, So when I was a kid, I had a music teacher, and sometimes we did performances. And she got a new system back when stereo speakers were a thing. And
Mm-hmm.
one came with a remote. And she'd make us sing, and she would wave. I called it the wand of power. She would wave
Mm-hmm.
thing when she was feeling it, and we were just like,
Yeah.
seventh graders that
Yeah.
really didn't,
Yeah.
that. So no, that's a great parallel, Ivan. Thank you. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Fumbled it. That was a great explanation for remote. I will think of it that way the next time I watch. Okay, are you ready for item number 2 for Everything is
Yeah.
Football? Okay.
Yeah.
I have here a Funko Pop. I'm going to try not to have the glare of it, of Elphaba from the Wicked movie, the Wicked series of books. She's a little witch with green skin, a black pointy hat, and a black dress and cloak with a little broom. Feel free to take your time, Ivan. But how is Elphaba football?
I don't exactly know who Elphaba is, but just
She
looking
is
at
the
the
Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz, but before she
yes,
earns
yes,
that title when she was younger, her origin story. So you can think of her in
right,
either way. It doesn't have to be this.
right,
She's the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz before we hate her.
right.
Or some people, like, I don't know, you'd really have to watch the show. It's more complicated than that. But
Yeah, I for some
oh, this is the first time we've stumped you.
no,
Yes!
I don't wanna appear. Oh man, this is
Take your time then, please, for the love of
it's
God, take your time choosing your words.
yes, yes. So again, when I was growing up playing football and being in the club in the academy, there were people who were working at the club, working
Okay.
at the facilities, at the building, and there was that lady, elderly lady, who used to do maintenance and cleaning and other things
Okay.
within the club. And she was always pissed off with us as young kids going in and out, playing, bringing grass on our studs.
Yes.
And she always would have a broom in her hands. And, she would literally use that broom to chase people around the club, including like the president of the club and the head coach. And she would yell, like, get the fuck out of here with your dirty boots. How many times I told you? And
Oh my God.
when you showed that figurine, I was like, yes. And we actually used to call her the witch of the club because she was like, oh man, I'm so sorry. It's so sexist or whatnot, but that's kind of
What? No,
ingrained
I mean,
into
like,
my.
I see these girls. I think you worded it really well. And again, you were a child, and that is the memory and the impression that was made, on you as a kid. And it is, how society, and we haven't even gotten into how, Eastern European folklore and representation of witches and whatnot. But that is inspiring. I can imagine, like, she worked hard on those floors. She just got them clean. And then like legions of little boys, and then their little boy adult, coaches coming in, talking about, the next match. And they don't care about the floor. No, they don't, because they don't have to clean it. So no, that's,
Yeah.
wow, that was a really good answer, Ivan. God rest that lady's soul wherever she is. May she not have to ever have to clean up after little football boys again.
Yeah.
Okay, are you ready for our final item? Item number 3.
Yes, please.
Okay, item number 3, folks, is a hockey puck.
Ooh.
I've been saving this for a while because if you don't know Ivan that well, you may not be aware how much Ivan loves hockey and how hockey is the best sport in the world and is harder than any other sport in the world, which is an actual fact that is written in the book of facts of the world. But not everyone knows that. So
I love hockey. I used to play hockey, coach hockey as well.
he loves the hockey so much. You think he loves football? You've never heard this man talk about hockey.
I'm a lot better at football than I am at hockey, but hockey is a passion of mine as well. Look, hockey puck and hockey itself, because hockey puck is a representation of hockey to me. Both games are very, very much connected and comparable. I don't know if you knew, but for example, the a lot of the Eastern European teams and the USSR team, national team of football and hockey up until 60s, 70s, last century, were dominantly consistent of the same players. So
No
people who
way.
would be, yeah, yeah, people who would be playing for the national teams,
So they played
hockey and
football in the
football
summer and
cross.
hockey in the winter.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Holy fuck! Same
That's
people.
how the same people. That's how much, and the way you think through the
Huh.
game, the way you operate on the playing surface, is very, very similar. And that's why a lot of the times when I would work with kids who play hockey, work with adults who play hockey and football, I always recommend people do both because
Mm,
if you become a better hockey player, you become a better football player, and vice versa.
okay.
Hockey is a lot faster; it's the fastest game on the planet, and if you can comprehend and if you can function on the ice, and if you are any good, if you get to the certain point of skill where you, for example, when you are skating without thinking about it, and you skate better than you walk, then you can really unlock the strategical and positional and tactical thinking on the ice, which effectively is the same as on the football pitch. And there are a lot of the elements that I learned from coaching hockey I implemented in coaching football and vice versa. The distances, the spaces, the dynamics, the proportional positioning on the playing surface is very, very similar, and both sports are very cross creditable. So I urge
Wow.
everybody who likes football to get into hockey and other way around. It's
Excellent.
yeah, it's a very, very good hybrid to have.
Well, and I think that that really sounds similar to what you mentioned before about the stronger players who have higher level experience being exposed to faster play. And as a potential shortcut to gaining that kind of access to having your mind work at a speed because everyone else is faster and then coming down a level and where it seems slower, like tachypsychia by default. And
Hmm.
if you're not everybody can get to the Premier League in order to come down lower, but more people have access to learning how to play hockey if you don't really value teeth or ankles. So, yes, thank you,
Yeah,
Ivan. That is our
no
final
problem.
item for Everything is Football. And I'm glad you were able to share a little bit of your hockey passion with everyone. Are you ready to do? We only have a few left of our
Yes.
10-minute tasting drawing.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, folks, this is our 10-minute tasting drawing. As mentioned earlier, Ivan can't watch an entire match of Wrexham play because it is traumatic for him. Well, and also boring and frustrating. So instead, he watches a 10-minute segment assigned by me. We randomly draw from our tin pot because we are a tin pot club, tin pot Mickey Mouse club. And then he attributes what he witnessed during that segment of time to the outcome of the match. So each 10-minute segments of 90 minutes is in the pot. It doesn't get replaced in the pot until the pot has been exhausted. So we take one out, he watches it, that segment of time, if it's like minute 1 to 10 or 0 to 10, doesn't get reused until the pot is empty. And today's numbers are minutes 61 to 70.
Yeah. Good
That
minutes.
should be pretty
Usually.
interesting. Well, that's about the
Um,
time subs come in. Oh, and
I
if he
think
has added time, he has to watch those too. So covers
yeah.
halftime or the end of the match, he has to watch those extra added minutes. But yeah, that's
Yep. Yep.
super
I'll
sub
I'll do
time
that.
for Parky. At least that's an interesting.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think statistically those minutes are the most eventful minutes
Perhaps yeah, the
in
most
the
dynamic.
in the world. In the world, like football games,
Oh,
pretty
really? For
sure those are
everyone?
the minutes that are. Yeah, yeah,
Huh?
yeah. I think statistically
Didn't know
those
that.
are the most important minutes. Yeah, yeah,
That's exciting. All right,
yeah.
my friend. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share on our what was not shorter episode? But I think we had good stuff. I'm glad that it went the way that it did. I was able to learn from you, and we were able to share some things with our viewer or ers.
I saw people popping in and out. Like there would be people who stay in for a few minutes. They come in, come out, and I think
That's
a
fine.
lot of the people, like, look, it's not for everybody, absolutely not.
Of
And we're not
course.
here again. Just like I and you said it many times before. We're not here to blow smoke and just sit here and happy clap and always make sure that everybody is positive. No, no, that's not what we do. We engage in good, interesting conversations with controversial within the controversial realm, so to speak. And we only use football here in Wrexham as a vehicle to discuss other things. And we will be doing more Ukraine stuff later on because, yeah, we have to talk. Like I will actually invite another person who is from Uzbekistan. He's been in New Zealand for about 10 years now. He's an ex-criminal lawyer. So he grew up in a post-USSR environment. And it would be good for all three of us to sit down and actually just discuss that geopolitical situation that we have right now in the world. And yeah, I think that will be a good couple of hours of us talking just about Ukraine and all the things that we see nowadays with regards to another aggression of the Russian fascist regime.
Well, I'd also like to insert that I believe that we would definitely have more that will be said about Wrexham if their style of play changes. Ivan just doesn't have much more to say on that, and it isn't going to change anytime soon.
It will not change. It will not change up until Parky is gone.
Yes, that is true. And I think that I agree. It's not a space where we are coming to necessarily, make people happy. But I think that rather than happiness, what we strive for in this space is learning and self-education or improvement, being more informed to be better people. In my case, to try and be a better football fan, and understanding football better, or understanding why some of the more technical things happen in Wrexham AFC helps me appreciate the magnificent moments better and appreciate the crap moments better within context. Because I have, a lifetime of catching up versus someone who's lived with football as their national pastime their entire lives. So thank you, folks, for stopping in, joining us. Remember to submit any questions that you might have on these topics, football or Ukraine or something else, to our Instagram, and we'll get Ivan to answer it. We'll get it discussed. And I still haven't come up with a catchy exit phrase for us.
No need. Thank you, ladies and gents. Appreciate your time. Please leave questions. Please be active in comments. Just ask us. Let's have a good organic conversation. That would be amazing. Thank you, Jesse. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye.
Oh, see you later. And we are ending the stream in 3, 2, 1.